In just 5 days, a brown bear that hadn't entered hibernation sneaked into the village repeatedly, brutally killing and eating 7 people and injuring 3 others. Among them was even a pregnant woman. When the brown bear detected the presence of humans, it knocked them to the ground with its huge paws, then used its sharp claws to tear open their abdomens and devour them alive. After this horrific incident, the police and the military stationed in the area jointly formed a bear hunting team of more than 600 people to conduct a large-scale mountain search. Later, the government also issued an order to cull bears, resulting in the shooting of hundreds of bears. But many years later, people suddenly realized that humanity was actually to blame for these tragedies. What exactly happened back then? It's common knowledge that the brown bear is a large mammal of the genus Ursus. In the family Ursidae, it can easily live for 20 to 30 years, with a maximum weight of up to 1134 kilograms. An adult brown bear can reach a body length of about 3 meters, making it the second largest bear in the world, second only to the polar bear. The muscles on the shoulders and back of a brown bear have very strong explosive power. A single paw strike of an adult male brown bear can reach a force of hundreds of kilograms. Any prey hit by it will have its bones broken and internal organs severely damaged in an instant. Black bears have to take a detour when they see it, and even tigers dare not provoke it. Brown bears are omnivorous, eating fish, meat, berries, honey, and more, and they also have high intelligence. If it happens to be hungry and there are humans nearby, it may even stand up and mimic a human waving to trick the prey into approaching before launching an attack. Every year before winter, brown bears prepare for hibernation. They usually eat a lot of meat to store fat, and when they have stored enough, they find a tree hole or cave to hibernate in. But this isn't absolute. In 1915, there was a brown bear that didn't hibernate. Instead, it sneaked into a human village when people were unprepared and attacked the defenseless villagers. The story took place in Minamabetsuro Kurosazawa, Tamami Village, Tamami District, Hokkaido, Japan. Nowadays, when people talk about Hokkaido, they all think of it as a prosperous place, but 100 years ago, the area of Minamabetsu was poor and dilapidated. The Japanese government thought that if the area was underdeveloped, it just needed development, so it encouraged people to actively settle and reclaim land in Minamabetsu. More than a dozen households responded to the call and built houses in Minamabetsu. But the transportation cost of cement was very high at that time, and Minamabetsu, which had just been reclaimed, had no money to buy cement. Therefore, all the houses built there were simple wooden huts and thatched cottages. In November 1915, the weather got colder day by day, and there were occasional sleet showers. That night, everyone was wrapped up in their quilts sleeping, and the whole family of a farmer named Ikeda was also sound asleep. But suddenly, several heart-wrenching neighs of horses jolted the Ikeda family awake from their sleep. Ikeda quickly got dressed and went to the stable to check what was happening. He saw that most of the corn originally hung under the eaves had fallen to the ground, and the quantity was obviously wrong. In the distance, a huge figure disappeared into the darkness. Ikeda was very worried and quickly checked if the horses, on which the family relied for a living, were injured. Luckily, the horses were unharmed. But the night was pitch black, and Ikeda knew he couldn't risk going out to investigate, so he went back to bed to continue sleeping. As soon as dawn broke, Ikeda hurried out of the house, eager to find out what had visited his home the night before. When he saw huge beast footprints near the stable, Ikeda immediately invited the hunters in the village to his home. To identify them, all the hunters recognized them as brown bear footprints at a glance, and it was definitely a large adult bear. This was very strange. With the cold weather, the brown bear should have already hibernated. So why would it break into the village to steal corn? The hunters believed that the brown bear, from the previous night, mustn't have eaten enough to survive the winter, so it had risked going down the mountain to steal food. They thought it would definitely hibernate once it had eaten its fill, so no one paid attention to the matter afterward. And indeed, the brown bear didn't appear again afterward, so the tension Ikeda had been feeling gradually eased. But he only felt at ease for a few days. On November 20th, Ikeda saw the brown bear again and realized that the animal still hadn't hibernated. Ikeda quickly told the whole village. Everyone thought the brown bear mustn't have had enough to eat with just the corn, so it had returned to the Ikeda family's home to steal something else. The villagers were afraid that the brown bear would hurt someone, so under the leadership of several hunters, they took up weapons, set up bait, and waited for the bear. But they waited for several days and saw nothing. Everyone thought the bear might have finally hibernated this time, so they planned to wait for 2 more days. If it didn't come, they would pack up the bait and go back to their normal lives. But unexpectedly, just as the villagers were about to give up, the gluttonous brown bear came again. Everyone quickly picked up their hunting rifles and fired wildly, but the rifles at that time had ordinary firepower, and their reloading speed was worrying. Additionally, their damage and accuracy were very poor. Several villagers and hunters fired for a long time, but the brown bear only suffered a few scratches. Then it charged around wildly and fled into the mountains. The hunters quickly chased after it, but before they could run far, they were forced to turn back by a sudden snowstorm. The hunters knew it was too dangerous to go into the mountains at this time, so they went back to the village. Later, They didn't even think about finding another time to go into the mountains to search for the bear, because they believed that after being surrounded and attacked, the brown bear would realize humans weren't to be messed with, and would no longer come to steal things, so everyone just let the matter go. The days that followed were indeed peaceful, and Ikeda never saw the brown bear again. But on December 9th, a sudden tragedy struck. In the morning, all the men in the village went out to work, leaving only women and children at home. Ikeda's wife and child were playing at home as usual. When they accidentally looked outside, they were shocked to see the brown bear coming to steal corn again. Ikeda's wife screamed in terror, and the child burst into tears too. The shouts disturbed the brown bear, which was in the middle of grabbing corn. It immediately rammed the door, broke into the house, and launched a fierce attack on Ikeda's wife and child. In an instant, the house was filled with cries of agony, and splatters of blood and scattered pieces of human flesh were everywhere. Before leaving, the brown bear even packed food to take back with it. It grabbed Ikeda's wife in its mouth, and went into the mountains. At noon, Ikeda went back home after finishing work. As soon as he got into the yard, he was stunned. Before even walking into the house, he saw his child lying in a pool of blood. When he stumbled into the house in a state of collapse, the sight was even more horrific. Remains of human bodies and pieces of clothing were scattered all over the floor. The child had long since stopped breathing, his wife was nowhere to be found, and brown bear paw prints were all over the ground. Ikeda realized the brown bear was responsible for everything, so he hurried to beg the villagers to help him find his missing wife, and kill the brown bear to avenge his family. In fact, when the villagers learned that the brown bear had killed people, their first thought was also to get rid of the evil killer. After all, no one knew if it would come back again, if it got addicted to eating humans, and added them to its menu. Coming to the village to eat people every day, even in whole village, might not be enough to feed it. So at dawn the next day, the men of Minamabetsu went to neighboring villages to find help, and finally formed a 30-person bear hunting team. These men took their hunting rifles and weapons, and headed into the deep mountains, searching everywhere for the brown bear and Ikeda's wife. Following the bloodstains on the ground, they successfully came face to face with the brown bear. Everyone quickly loaded their guns and fired, but the hunting rifles failed in the nick of time. They had brought 5 guns in total, but unexpectedly, only one of them worked. The rest were duds. The brown bear was enraged by the sound of the single gunshot. It bared its teeth and claws and charged at the group, scaring everyone into fleeing in a panic. In the critical time, a hunter used the only functional hunting rifle to shoot the brown bear again. After 2 gunshots, the brown bear fled in a panic. Frightened, after confirming the brown bear had gone far away, the members of the bear hunting team gathered. One of them, a retired veteran named Yamamoto, told everyone that he recognized the huge brown bear they had just seen. This bear had a large patch of white fur on its chest, and a long slanted scar from its back to its neck. 3 years earlier, it had killed several indigenous people of the Japanese archipelago. Yamamoto had joined a bear hunting team to try to kill it back then, but the attempt failed in the end. Now, the reason the brown bear was attacking humans again was presumably that it had tasted human flesh before, and found the taste unforgettable. This was why it hadn't hibernated, and instead come down the mountain to hunt humans. Since it had escaped this time, it would definitely hold a deeper grudge against humans, and no one knew when it might come back to kill again. Upon hearing that the brown bear had a long history of evil deeds, and would come back, everyone was filled with fear. They proposed quickly finding Ikeda's wife, going back to the village, and discussing ways to deal with the brown bear. They couldn't allow it to continue eating people. Later, everyone searched carefully in the forest along the bloodstains, and finally found Ikeda's wife's body under a big tree. The body had been gnawed beyond recognition. When Ikeda saw his wife's tragic state, he fell to the ground and wept bitterly. After crying for a long time, he forced himself to make arrangements for his wife's funeral. The young and middle-aged men in the village voluntarily went to Ikeda's house to help keep vigil for the deceased, while the women and children were settled in a few relatively sturdy houses. In addition, to deal with the brown bear as soon as possible, several villagers rode horses to find more help, completely unaware that gathering the elderly, women, and children in one place would save the brown bear the trouble of searching for them one by one. At around 8:30 p.m., the men were still keeping vigil at Ikeda's house when the brown bear suddenly broke through the door and headed straight for the body on the ground, obviously wanting to retrieve the food it had stored. The people at the scene were stunned for a few seconds, then quickly picked up their hunting rifles to attack. Villagers without guns frantically banged on rice basins with shovels. This method actually worked. The brown bear was scared away by the commotion they made. The men breathed a sigh of relief instantly, thinking that at least nothing more would happen that night. Little did they know, the brown bear hadn't returned to the mountains. Having been humiliated here, it had to take revenge elsewhere, so it ran to the place where some of the women and children were hiding. The owner of this house was named Akashi. The villagers thought his house was in a good location, so they sent their wives and children to stay there. Among them were Sato's pregnant wife and their 2 sons, as well as Akashi's wife and their 5 children. As a precaution, they also sent a hunter to stand guard outside. Since the temperature was very low at night, Akashi's wife lit a stove inside the house to keep warm. Completely unaware that this would attract the brown bear, when it saw the faint light inside the house, the brown bear charged straight in, and launched an attack on Akashi's wife, who was cooking. The children screamed in terror, but these cries only acted as a stimulant for the brown bear's hunt. Sato's pregnant wife was knocked to the ground, the brown bear's sharp claws quickly tore open her abdomen, and then it began to feast on her. The house was in chaos, and the hunter had no way to intervene. He could only help Akashi's severely injured wife escape outside. Adhering to the principle of saving as many as possible, each of them carried a child while running out, then quickly shouted to find someone for help. Soon after, the men arrived one after another with their weapons. Hearing the horrific sounds of biting and chewing inside, no one dared to rush into the house, but one thing was certain, there were no more cries of agony or sobs coming from inside. So the men thought there were no survivors left, only the brown bear feeding inside. To get rid of this evil creature, they planned to set the house on fire and burn the brown bear alive. But this idea was stopped by Akashi's wife, who begged everyone not to do it. She believed there must still be surviving children inside. In response, the men gave up the idea of setting the house on fire to force the brown bear out and shoot it. The villagers divided the work among themselves. Some of them took their guns and aimed at the door, while others ran to the back of the house and banged on pots and pans. After scaring the brown bear out of the house, the people guarding the door fired wildly, but the brown bear was too cunning. After being shot once, it hurried into the mountain forest. The group didn't continue chasing it. Instead, they went into the house to check the situation. Inside, they found splatters of blood everywhere, along with countless broken limbs. The bloody scene left everyone holding their breath. They endured their discomfort to clean up the bodies, and found that 5 people had died, and 2 others were severely injured. These 2 people were able to survive, thanks to Akashi's wife stopping everyone from setting the fire. The evil brown bear had caused 7 deaths, and 3 injuries in just a few days. The remaining villagers didn't dare to sleep, fearing they would become the brown bear's meal in their sleep. But this couldn't go on forever. To kill the brown bear, the villagers decided to seek help from the Hokkaido police again. In fact, they had already sent someone to ask for help before, but the police had been delayed for some unknown reason, and hadn't arrived. The villagers had to send someone again. Day turned to night again, and the police still hadn't come. The villagers could only stick together for safety. They gathered in one house and lit a bonfire outside. Luckily, they didn't meet with the brown bear that night. Early the next morning, a group of people arrived in Minamabetsu, including not only Hokkaido police officers, but also firefighters and staff from the forestry agency, altogether more than 100 people. They said that they were determined to catch the evil brown bear, but in reality, while there were indeed many people, there were very few functional guns. Still, having some guns was better than having none. When the villagers saw the police arrive, their tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Now, they had both people and weapons. The only thing left was to find the brown bear and shoot it. The group planned to set up bait, to lure the bear to Akashi's house and then kill it. But the brown bear was far smarter than everyone had imagined. Just as it was about to approach the prepared trap, it seemed to sense hostility and immediately turned around and ran away. The bear hunting team was stunned as they watched the brown bear run away. Seeing how smart the bear was, they realized that if they set the same trap again later, the bear would definitely not fall for it. Moreover, with the weapons they had, it would be difficult to succeed in getting back the forest to shoot the bear. They really had no other ideas, and could only seek help from the military, which had sophisticated weapons. On December 13th, the 7th Infantry Regiment stationed nearby came to provide support. A total of 30 elite soldiers arrived, bringing with them 60 Type 38 rifles, and more than 10 hunting dogs. The bear hunting team now had a large number of members and reliable weapons. This time, they had no fear and marched in a mighty procession up the mountain to kill the brown bear. A group of people conducted a carpet-like search on the mountain, but the brown bear did something unexpected. No one knew if it was hungry again, or if it had sensed danger. While the bear hunting team was making a big fuss searching for it, the bear took a different path and swaggered down the mountain. When it arrived at the village, it presumably wanted to eat people, but since it couldn't find a suitable target, it had to settle for some corn. The villagers who spotted the brown bear immediately sent a message. When the bear hunting team learned that the bear had gone to the village again, they quickly gathered and headed back. They set up an ambush on a bridge leading downstream, waiting to shoot the bear when it went back to the mountain. In the evening, when it wasn't completely dark yet, everyone was still guarding near the bridge. Just then, someone saw a dark figure standing on the opposite bank of the river and thought it was a member of the bear hunting team. The man quickly told the figure not to stay there, but the figure didn't respond. The man felt something was wrong, so he stared intently, and suddenly realized the dark figure wasn't a human at all, but the brown bear standing up to confuse him. The man shouted fire quickly. After a few gunshots, the brown bear roared in pain and fled into the mountain forest. The members of the bear hunting team went to check the spot where the brown bear had stood and found a lot of blood on the ground. They were very frustrated. They had let the cunning brown bear escape again, since it was already completely dark. Even though the bear hunting team had a large number of people and knew the bear was injured, they didn't dare go up the mountain at night, no one knew if the brown bear, hiding in the darkness, would suddenly rush out and attack people at random. Everyone had to go home first and make plans later. After dawn the next day, the bear hunting team went up the mountain to look for the brown bear, following the bloodstains and footprints. Originally, with this method, they would soon find the bear that had escaped repeatedly, but suddenly, a heavy snowstorm hit, and in no time, all the traces were covered by snow. Everyone was stunned. Were they going to return empty-handed again this time? Just then, Yamamoto secretly pulled aside a hunter who was familiar with the mountain trails. He said that with such a large-scale mountain search, the brown bear would definitely notice, and would never stay in its den waiting to be killed. Instead, it would escape via another route, most likely in the opposite direction of the bear hunting team. That way, if the main team failed, they could ambush the bear from behind and take it by surprise. The hunter trusted Yamamoto completely. Since retiring from the military, Yamamoto had been hunting for many years, and his experience was far more extensive than that of an ordinary hunter, so the hunter followed Yamamoto without hesitation. The two climbed the mountain from the opposite direction, crossed several small hills, and surprisingly found the brown bear lying under a tree asleep. Yamamoto was eager to rush over and kill the bear immediately, but he quickly regained his composure. The brown bear they were facing was far more fearsome than an ordinary bear. Several people had already failed to gain any advantage against it before. Yamamoto was worried that just the two of them might not be able to defeat the bear at all, yet the opportunity was right in front of them. If they missed it, there was no telling what other evil deeds the brown bear might commit. So Yamamoto picked up his old hunting rifle and walked forward slowly. When he was less than 20 meters away from the brown bear, he aimed the gun at its heart. After a single gunshot, the brown bear, struck in the heart, let out a shrill howl of pain, then charged fiercely at Yamamoto. Yamamoto didn't collapse from fear. Instead, he shot again. This time, the bullet hit the brown bear's head, and the bear fell to the ground immediately. As more and more blood flowed out, the brown bear took its last breath. It was hard to believe Yamamoto had single-handedly killed the evil brown bear. Before long, the main team arrived. After confirming that the man-eating brown bear was dead, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. But they didn't retreat immediately. Instead, they searched the mountain carefully again, fearing there might be other bears that hadn't hibernated. Luckily, they found no other bears roaming outside in the end. After that, they needed to work together to carry the bear back to the village, and this was no easy task, for the brown bear was very large. It was actually 2.7 meters long, and weighed an astonishing 380 kilograms. It was no exaggeration to say that it could easily crush a person to death with just one sitting. After successfully carrying the bear back to the village, a veterinarian performed an autopsy, and found many human body fragments in the bear's stomach, proving that they hadn't caught the wrong bear. Later, the villagers were so angry that they found a large pot. Surprisingly, they didn't find the act horrifying at all. Even though there were human remains in the bear's stomach, they still proceeded to cook and taste the bear meat. Just thinking about it sends chills down one's spine. The bear's skull and pelt were kept as mementos, but the person in charge of preserving them was very unreliable, and the items went missing before long. Now that revenge had been taken and the crisis successfully resolved, the villagers should have been able to return to their normal lives, but after discussion, they actually decided to move away collectively. The reason was that the insane brown bear had killed 7 people, and another person had died 3 years after the bear's death, due to severe injuries sustained earlier. The village had never had many residents, and the appearance of this one brown bear had destroyed several happy families. Every time the villagers saw familiar scenes, they felt sorrow, and were reminded of the horrifying sights they had seen. The tragic state of those who had been eaten lingered in their minds. It was better to leave this place of suffering. Soon, the villagers packed their luggage. Some left without hesitation, while others went even further, setting their houses on fire to cut off all ties completely. Later, this incident caused a huge stir in Japan. The government even issued a bear culling order, and hundreds of bears were shot dead in the following period. Many experts stepped forward to explain why the brown bear had attacked humans. They believed that the bear that attacked Minamabetsu had eaten several indigenous people before, and loved the taste of human flesh. When it went down the mountain to steal corn, and met with living humans, its attacks became unstoppable. As for why it didn't hibernate, the main reason was that it hadn't stored enough fat. The brown bear knew it couldn't survive the winter, so it gave up hibernation, and went down the mountain to find food, unexpectedly stumbling upon something even more delicious. The reason it hadn't stored enough fat was likely due to the villagers' land reclamation in Minamabetsu. Forests were turned into farmland, reducing the amount of food the brown bear could hunt. This forced it to go down the mountain to steal corn, and eventually to eat humans. If this was the case, the people harmed by the brown bear and their families were pitiful, and the brown bear itself was also pitiful. Many years later, the government decided to turn Minamabetsu into a tourist attraction. They tracked down the villagers who had experienced the incident, and based on the stories they told, rebuilt houses on the original site of Minamabetsu, recreated the scene of the brown bear's attacks, and even built a giant brown bear statue and a memorial hall, attracting countless tourists to visit. Yamamoto, who had defeated the brown bear, with his strong mental fortitude and skills, became a well-known bear hunting hero. In fact, after dealing with the man-eating brown bear, Yamamoto never stopped. He remained dedicated to bear hunting. He lived to the age of 92. Some people were curious about how many bears he had hunted in his lifetime. Yamamoto's grandson answered this question. He said he had gone through his grandfather's relics, and believed Yamamoto had hunted at least 300 bears. No one knows if this is true or not, but there was one person who firmly believed it to be true. This person was Okawa, the son of Minamabetsu's village chief back then. In the year the brown bear attacked and ate people, Okawa was just a 7-year-old child, and he personally experienced those 5 terrifying, heart-stopping nights. Since then, he vowed to follow Yamamoto's example and hunt bears. And he did exactly that. Over 37 years, he achieved the feat of hunting 102 bears. Not only did he devote himself wholeheartedly to bear hunting, but his son also learned to hunt bears under his influence. But the son initially set his sights on a 500-kilogram bear, and spent 8 years before finally taking it down. After learning about this case, many people felt deeply sorrowful, thinking that the people killed by the brown bear were very innocent and pitiful. But upon careful reflection, something seems amiss. The root cause of this incident was essentially the unordered invasion of natural territories by humans. Minamabetsu was originally the brown bear's habitat. They had food, water, and shelter. But humans arrived uninvited, cut down trees recklessly, and competed with the bears for food, such as catching the salmon and nuts that the bears relied on to store fat. The brown bears couldn't get enough to eat, so they couldn't hibernate. They had to go down the mountain to steal corn, only to be attacked by humans, which sparked a strong desire for revenge in them. Moreover, the houses in Minamabetsu village weren't sturdy, and the whole village had no decent defensive tools. In the end, this tragic incident happened. This reminds us that when coexisting with nature, awe is far more important than conquest. When pursuing development, we shouldn't be in too much of a hurry. Human safety is far more important than the speed of development. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.